Hey everybody, welcome back to this fourth and hopefully the final part in which we cover the theme of creating rugs. In the previous three videos, if you haven't seen them, I'll leave a link in the description, so go check them out. In this fourth video, I'm gonna try and cover how to create a more complex rug made out of geometry or comprised of geometry. Now, the idea to make this video came from me watching this Ant-Man movie. Let me just show you the image. Here it is. It's basically a movie about a guy that wears a suit. It can shrink to an ant size. So at a certain point in the movie, he jumps down into something that resembles a rug, and this is the actual type of rug that we're going to try to recreate. As you can see, the strands of the rug are not just like single lines, but they have a certain geometry to it. So all of the strands that are making the whole rug are basically geometry. Now, movies aside, if we want to see image or something from the real world, that would be something like this. So we can have a rug made out of weaved in or swirly fiber bases, or however you want to call it. All right, so let's see how we can make this. All right, just so that you know, if you want to follow up with this tutorial, you're gonna have to have access to i2 Software Forest Pack Pro. Forest Pack Pro is an amazing scattering plugin, as it is used when you want to scatter a certain geometry over another, either an area or geometry. In order to get the i2 Software Forest Pack Pro, all you have to do is jump over here and i2software.com, and from here you can either go to the download section and download it. Also, you have an amazing compilation of tutorials over here on how to use Forest Pack Pro as well as RailClone. That's another piece of software that they have. All right, so let's jump back to what we want to make. Now, as we saw, we're gonna have to make some kind of a geometry that is going to resemble what we have here. All right, so I'm gonna close this, and just so I don't lose like 10 minutes just making this geometry, I already went ahead and I created these three strands over here, as you can see them. Now, the way I made these is very, very simple. All I did was I made a cylinder, then I added two more next to it, so they're in a location like this. As you can see, three of them. On top of them, I have a UVW map, so I can have some mapping. Although I don't think this is necessary, then I've added a twist modifier to obtain this kind of an effect. And on top of it, I've placed the turbo smooth. The other two are basically the same ones, but with a different set of modifiers on top of it. As you can see here, I've placed two bend modifiers to obtain this form, and this one is another variation. Now, what is very important here, and you don't screw it up, is once you're done with making your geometry, you want to make sure that your pivot, when you're set it to affect pivot only, you want to put it at the center here, so at the very lowest spot. The reason for this is once we start scattering the geometry all over, if our pivot is not centered correctly, we are going to run into some problems. So, all right, let's start and see how we can get this to work the way we want it to work. First thing that we're going to do is I'm going to go over to create, and I'm going to select my base here. So it's my rug base. From the from the geometry create tab, I'm going to scroll down to i2 Software. So if you've downloaded the plugin, you're going to have this i2 Software. Now, as soon as we're in here, we have two options. We have Forest Pack Pro and you have Forest LOD, or level of details. Now we want to go with the Forest Pro. So just click here and click on the rug. It's going to ask us if we're going to be using this in a large area. Do we want to use camera limit to visibility? If we had a huge scene, this would be yes, but in this case it won't hurt. But as our surface is very small, it won't really make any difference, but still we're gonna press yes. All right, so as soon as we do this, we're gonna notice that on our rug we have two huge planes. No panic, don't worry, don't panic, this is completely normal. Now I'm gonna go over to the Modify tab. And as soon as we are in our Modify tab, you're gonna notice something on this side. We have a lot of roll down menus. And if this is the first time you are using the i2 Software Forest Pack Pro, then this might be a bit scary, as there's a lot of options over here. Like when they're collapsed, you don't see, but once we start clicking, we're gonna see that we have a lot of options, and all of these options are useful. So we're gonna start easy, and we're gonna try to get it to be what we want it to be. So the first thing you need to know that this is a scatter plugin, so it needs to scatter something. In this case, it's trying to scatter this template, one plane. We want to change this, so it's not scattering this huge plane, but instead it's trying to scatter these three strands over here. The way to change this is quite simple. All you have to do is to be in the rollout geometry, and here, instead of using a template, you're gonna go down to custom object. Click here, and as you can see, those planes are cleared up. Just press on the none here and define which geometry you want this thing to scatter. In my case, I'm going to try the first one. Click here. It's going to ask us if we want to use these recommended options. Just go click yes. And now we have this being scattered here. As you can see here, we have some dots, and if we get closer to it, we can see that it kind of resembles what we have here. The reason for this is because these proxy meshes of what we have here. So before we do anything else, I want to go ahead and add both of these two strands as well. The way to do it is go over here and press on Add New Item. As soon as we click it, we're going to see here we have a new item thing. We're going to do the same exact thing, make it a custom object, click none, and click on the second one. And one more time, new item, custom object, click. Okay, so once we have this, we've basically told our Forest Pack Pro that we want to take these three strands and scatter them on this surface. So before I do anything else, let's render one variation so we can see what we have exactly here. As we can see, we have this plane and these two small strands. So we have a start, something to start from. Now, once we have this, I'm going to close the geometry roll down menu. And I'm going to switch over to my distribution map. So the distribution map is basically controlling how these geometries are going to be scattered throughout this whole place. Now, by default, this is placed on spread 1. And as you can see, this is kind of a noise texture. You can either choose to have your own bump map, or we can choose one of the presets we have here. Now, for this one, I want to use either a very dense or a full map. So I'm going to hit full for now. And right away, you're going to see that we have something different happening here. Again, I'm going to go ahead and re-render. And as we can see, we have a different result. Now we have a bit more of these strands, but still they are far from looking realistically. So how do we make them denser? Well, as soon as we have this set as full, the next thing that we want to do is control the density directly from here. So it says density, you have units. Now this is by default set to 2500 centimeters. That's a bit too much for this one. So let's try with something like maybe 250. As soon as we enter 250, and I'm gonna render so we can see exactly what we have. Although, as you can see, we have a closer approximation of how our rug is going to look, but let's just render it and see. And now I can see that I have more of these strands, even though they are not perfect. So I need to make this even smaller. So let's try 100. Hopefully that's going to be enough. All right, re-render again. And now, as we can see, our rug is starting to get a more realistic, or at least a more closer look to what we wanted to have. So now I'm gonna stick with this 100 units for now, and I'm gonna close the distribution map. So we went over through the geometry and distribution. Now, the next thing that I want to take a look at is, if I zoom in, I'm going to notice that I have some of these strands that are the straight ones. We have some that are bent to the left, some that are bent to the right. Now, the great thing about using ForceBack Pro is that when you go back to geometry, here you can choose the percentage of which strands you want to have more and which ones you want to have less. That is controlled directly here in the probability field. For example, if I want to have, let's say, 33% of the straight ones, then I want to have 33% of these ones, the second ones, and as well 33% of the last ones. That is going to give me an even distribution, and I should get some variety. But the great thing about it is that even though I add this kind of a variety to my rug, it's really not going to make it stand out so much. Because if I want to have a really realistic and different looking strands, I would have to have 15 or maybe even 20 different geometries. Now, like I said, the great thing about ForceBack Pro is that it has this option built into it. Now, this option that I'm talking about is transformation. If you scroll down over here, you're going to see transform roll down menu, and in here you have translation, rotation, and scale. Now, what this does, it's going to allow us, for example, the translation is going to give us the option to have these strands translate from one to the other form in percentage. So, for example, by default, this is set to X, Y, and Z. As you can see, the Z option 0 is 0, and XY, it goes from -20 to 20. By default, this is disabled. If I enable it, so actually I'm gonna render out one image so you can see exactly what the translation does. So I'm gonna render as it is without this enabled. So this is what we have now, and as soon as I turn on the translation, and I'm gonna re-render half of it so you can see the difference right away. Well, in all honesty, as soon as the render finished, I saw that it really doesn't make too much of a difference as it is right now. But now, once we go over here and turn on rotation, we're gonna get a much different result, because now the rotation is gonna be from -5 to 5. So let's try it with -15 to 15, also in the Y -15 to 15. This should give us a bit of a nice difference in the rotation. So again, let's re-render. And from what we can see here, now our rug is starting to get some form. So a lot of these are starting to bend, and they behave like they would behave on a realistic rug. Now, the next thing that we want to use here is the scale. So it works pretty much the same way as with the other ones. So like the rotation is going to give us some transformations here. So the scale goes from 80% to 120%. So once I enable this, it should give me some of these fibers to be smaller, some are going to be thicker, some are going to be taller. Again, let's re-render so you guys can see the difference right away. And now we can see that we have some difference in how our strands are starting to look like on our rug. Another thing worth mentioning here is the fact that we can actually use a map for the translation, for the rotation, as well as for the scale. So similar like with the V-Ray fur, we can use a map here and control directly how our scaling is going to be done or how our rotation is going to be done. So now once we have these out of the way, let's address another issue that we might have with our rug here. If I zoom in to the edge, I'm going to notice that some of the strands are really close to the edge and they don't look natural. Like you wouldn't see on a regular rug like this, you wouldn't see strands on the edge here. So let's see how we can fix this issue. In order to fix this issue, I'm going to go ahead, select my rug. I'm going to go Alt Q so I can isolate it, and I'm going to zoom in here. All right, so now I'm going to select these edges. So this one, hold Control down, this one and this one. Go Ring, hold down Control, click Polygon. This is going to select all the polygons across those edges. Now from here, I'm going to go ahead and click on, let's see, Detach. Once we have Detach, I want to detach this as a clone and call it Border. Border line. All right. Just make sure you click it as a detach as clone because we don't want to chop it off from our rug. So detach as clone, click OK. Polygon, click again, and now right click and hide our hide selection, and we hit our rug. Now end the isolation. All right, so now here's the interesting part. When you're working with the ForcePack Pro, you have the ability to go ahead and select certain areas in which you want to exclude geometry from. The way to do this is simply go over here where it says Areas. You open it, and now what you want to do is go over here where you see these pluses. Now the first one says Add a new spline area. We don't want that one. Add a new object area, exclude only. This is the one we want. So we're going to click on it, and now it's asking us to define where that exclude area is going to be. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on my borderline. Right away, you're going to notice that all of the strands that were touching that borderline disappeared. So now I'm going to hide my, whoops, not hide selection. I'm going to go unhide all. Yes, and that unhid my original rug. So I'm going to right click, select the rug, not the rug base, but the borderline, right click and hide selection. So now, once we re-render, we shouldn't see any of these strands overlap the edges. So let's go ahead and see this difference here. So render production. And as soon as the render is finished, now we can see that we no longer have any of these strands protruding through the edges, which is what we wanted to achieve. All right, so we saw how to make the geometry. Now let's give it a bit of more lively colors, because right now it kind of looks bleak and just white. For this, I'm gonna use Bitmap. I actually went ahead and I found this image. I kind of liked the colors, so let's go ahead and add this. So the first thing we're going to do is for my base, I'm going to use that same texture. So click, make sure we can see it. Now, we have the texture applied to the base, but see what happens when I press the render button with just by doing this. I click, and from what we can see, we have that texture applied to the base, but it really isn't translating quite well on our geometry. So let's see how we can fix this. I'm going to select my ForcePack Pro, And here I'm going to close the areas. I'm going to close the transform. And down here we have a roll down called material. We're going to open material. And here is how you control how your material is going to act here. Now, by default, we have this material thing set up like this. So what we have to do here is I'm going to open my material editor, and here I'm going to go ahead, let's go ahead and select an empty material, call it forest material, and I'm going to go ahead and apply it to my selection. So I've applied it to my ForestPack Pro. Let me just check this for a second. So render. What you can notice is as soon as I've placed that green material, now all of my forest created geometry is green. Now, if I wanted to follow a certain texture, the way to do it would be to go here and click, and from the selection, I need to choose this new option you have here called Forest Color. So once you click it, you're going to get this new window over here. Now, by default, it's going to ask you to select what kind of colors you want to mix up together. But since we don't want to have a color, we want to go and override this. So just click over here and override. And here, we're going to click on Get Color from Map. So again, you have to click here. And now we have to specify which map. So click None, go Bitmap, I click Cancel, and I'm simply in the bitmap, I'm going to pull my rug texture. There we go. Go back. And now the thing is, before we do anything to it, all right, actually, let me just render so you can see what exactly is being done and what you should click and get what. So again, render. So as we can see, our rug is starting to get a bit of the color from the base, but because we only set it to get the color from the map, we didn't specify how it should sample the base. So that is defined over here. By default, it's set at random values. You want to use STexture on surface option. So once you click this, it's going to take and sample the base, and based on that information, it's going to put it on top of your rug. Now, the last thing we want to set up here is our blending mode. For example, if we leave it as it is on color, it's going to take the base of the color or the texture, and it's going to blend it with our original white color. Since we don't want this, we're going to switch the blending mode from color to normal. And now, once we re-render, we should get our rug to be exactly the same texture as our original file is. So let's re-render and see what we get. And as soon as the render is finished, we can see the final output of what we did. Now we have all of these swirly pieces of the rug, all colored, and they're following the pattern of the bitmap. All right, so from what we basically saw here, we can use this kind of rug or this kind of approach to model a rug like this one, or you can just take a different kind of geometry and obtain something like maybe like this. I've actually seen some of these rugs. They're kind of interesting. I think they're made out of cloth or cut up pieces of some like old shirt or something. Here is another one. So again, you do the same exact steps like we did in this video, and you can end up with something like this. Just instead of using the same geometry that I use here, you can use something to your liking. So if you guys are still watching, then don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button, as it really does help a lot with YouTube. So that would be it for this video, and you guys take care, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye bye.